and we're still accelerating. So we're about to hit the steepest angle of this uphill, and I've just overtaken a Chrysler Grand Voyager, which is always a good thing.
Search AutoTrader.
The Suzuki Swift is one of South Africa's best-selling passenger cars, and for good reason. Its spec-to-price ratio is impressive. It's extremely light on fuel, cheap to maintain, and they just look quite cool and funky. So it stands to reason that when there's a new one launched within the local market, it's a big deal, not only for Suzuki, but for the broader automotive landscape. You see, if this new Swift to my left-hand side is good, it will become the new benchmark within the budget segment. So we've got one in studio here, along with its predecessor. Let's check out what the new Swift has to offer. The previous generation Swift we have here is an AutoTrader SA employees car. It's fairly new, being registered in December of last year, but it's not exactly comparing apples with apples. You see, this is a GLX equipped with the automated manual gearbox, whereas the new Swift that we have here is the GL Plus specification. But it does allow us to compare the two engines. Now, the key difference with the new Swift, and I think some of the controversy surrounding it, is the fact that there's a new engine that is called the Z12E, which is a 1.2 liter, same as this, but it's a 3-cylinder. It's a new engine. This is the K12M. Now, they've developed pretty much identical power outputs. This is 60 kilowatts at 61 kilowatts. That's 113 newton meters. That's 112 newton meters. Curb weight is also not too different. This is claimed at 875 kilograms. That is around 905 kilograms. But I suppose the proof is in the pudding. Suzuki claim the new car is significantly lighter on fuel, up to 10%. So when we head out on the road later, we can do a comparison and let you know how they perform. Now, styling is an inherently subjective matter, and I'm not qualified to really speak about it. Just look at my hair. But I think everybody that I've spoken to agrees the new Swift is a slightly better executed design exercise. You've got new headlights, a similar shape, but obviously a bit sharper. Also a nice gaping front grille, a very pronounced shoulder line with actual physical door handles on the door now versus integrated into the top of the door on the previous model. You still get the rather bulbous rear lights, but they're a lot better integrated. I think it's a more cohesive design overall. What do you think of its looks? Let us know in the comment section below if you think the old one looks better than the new one, or vice versa. In terms of boot space, there's really not much to choose between these two cars, as I'll demonstrate with our test suitcase here at AutoTrader. Pop this in here. See, probably got space for a smaller bag on your left-hand side, and it's pretty much identical in the new car. Same platform, similar space. Let's check out the space in the rear. Rear occupant space has not really been a problem in the outgoing Swift, and as you can see in my driving position, I've got reasonable legroom, quite a lot of headroom. Let's hop into the new car and see what that's like. See, it's almost identical, really. There's not that much more space, maybe a fraction more. This is all the way back right now, and I've got a similar amount of legroom, but in my driving position on this side, if I switch over, you can see just marginally better legroom. Headroom is pretty much the same, but much of a muchness, really. You may have gathered by now that it doesn't seem to be too much different between the old and the new Swift, but you'd be wrong. You see, having these two cars back to back has been illuminating, to say the least. The new car is built so much better than the old one. The perceived quality, despite the fact that there are hard touch plastics everywhere inside and it's all very basic, everything feels of a better quality. The car feels like it's screwed together better, and I think it's overall a better product. Now, that is a GLX level model, so it has things like cruise control and various other goodies inside. This being a GL Plus, is not really fair for us to compare the two specs, but if you look at what you get in this GL Plus, especially from a safety perspective now, it is a big upgrade over the previous car. There's now traction and stability control as standard, as well as 6 airbags. So this is quite a safe vehicle. And if you look at the list price, they start from around 220 and go up to 285,000 Rand for the new Swift. This particular car is around 240,000 Rand. You also get a 2-year 30,000 kilometer service plan and a 5-year 200,000 kilometer mechanical warranty. So I think the new car appears to be superior to the old car, especially when you step inside, feel the perceived quality and the value on offer. It is a better product. But as they say, the proof is in the pudding. So let's head out on the road, drive the new Swift, and see if that new engine cuts the mustard.
So here we are aboard the new Suzuki Swift. Now, I have driven that previous generation model that we had in the studio to do a bit of a fuel consumption comparison, but I'm hesitant to do a like-for-like comparison there because that's an AMT, this is a manual. The fuel consumption is going to differ, but I'll give you the figures anyway. This car, over the test routes, it's a predetermined route that I've had for a couple of press cars just to determine fuel consumption. This achieved roughly 5.2 liters per 100 kilometers across the route, whereas that AMT of the previous generation model achieved 5.4 liters per 100 kilometers. Now, that could all be down to the gearbox, but from my experience, this car is marginally lighter on fuel. Suzuki claim up to 10% lighter on fuel. So I suppose in a way that could be true. We'd need to test them for a bit longer, or the best thing to do would be to get another manual variant of the previous generation or a CVT. So that's the other big news about the Swift. You see, the previous gen had the automated manual as the auto gearbox option, whereas the new one is a CVT. Now, it's kind of pick your poison there because I don't like AMTs and I don't really like CVTs, but I think if I had to choose, it would probably be a CVT. So I'm interested to see how the new Swift with a CVT performs, but at least for now, I can say this new engine is as light, if not slightly lighter on fuel than its predecessor. But the problem that I think a lot of people had was the fact the new car has got one less cylinder and one fewer kilowatt, one fewer newton meter of torque, which on paper is really negligible. It's nothing. But the fact that the car is that 25 or so kilos heavier, slightly less power, slightly less torque, one less cylinder, I think people thought maybe the car would be slower than its predecessor, which is not really progress. However, there is a big caveat when it comes to 3-cylinder engines, and that is the way in which they deliver their power. They can feel and even sound a little bit gruff in the lower echelons of the rev range, but where they do excel is in mid-range torque delivery. Now, what that means is the previous K-series engine, it liked to be revved. So you could get reasonable performance out of the car if you revved it out. And the engine is very rev happy. Same for the ubiquitous K15B that powers so many Suzuki and Toyota models. But this Z series of engines, this feels a lot better in the mid-range, and for me this is a better engine for the Swift. You see, from around 2,000 to 4,500 RPM, this engine feels very elastic and really nice in terms of its power delivery. Now, I've got it here in the city. It feels right at home in the city. It's nice and small, compact, light clutch action, easy to use gearbox. It's sourced from ASIN. But what I'd really like to feel is the car out on the freeway. Now, I've already got some feedback on that because I've been driving the car for a few days now, but I'd like to take you on the freeway because it has been abnormally windy in Gauteng over the past few days. And one of the big drawbacks of products that emanate from India, especially the smaller hatchback derivatives of vehicles like Ryno Kwid, Datsun Go, and even the Suzuki Jimny, they get really flummoxed, as I would say, by crosswind. They don't feel great when you throw a crosswind at them. They feel quite unstable. From my experience in the past few days, that really hasn't been the case. I'll show you when we head out on the freeway. I'm not too far away from it now. I feel that this car is a lot more refined than its predecessor, and generally speaking, sitting inside here, as I mentioned in studio, the quality and just overall execution of the product feels that bit better than its predecessor. So if you go for the GL, you don't get the infotainment screen, which I think is in this day and age. You need that. It's a 7-inch unit in this car, and you can see from the large plastic border around it that when you have the GL Plus, you don't quite have the cream of the crop of the Swift range. I believe if you buy the GLX model, you get yourself cruise control, which is on the steering wheel here, and a 9-inch Suzuki infotainment system. So if you're really after some high spec car or more car for your money in the budget segment, GLX is probably going to be your best bet. But if you are on a strict budget, this GL Plus gives you pretty much everything that you need from a car. I do miss cruise control, but I'm a bit of a brat. I'm a bit spoiled now at this point in my career. But all things considered, this GL Plus is possibly all you need. And at 240,000 Rand, I could see many students and youngsters heading into their first new car choosing a Swift, because it is just that good. It's fairly practical, super light on fuel, they're notoriously reliable, and they're very cheap to service and maintain. There's also a very lengthy warranty from Suzuki, and in this segment, an increasingly rare phenomenon, the inclusion of a service plan. 2 years, 30,000 Ks. It doesn't sound like much, but to have 2 years of servicing covered from when you purchase the vehicle, well, let's just say when it comes to servicing a vehicle without a service plan, that first bill can be slightly eye-watering when you've already been paying monthly installments, insurance, and fuel for a car. Then to be hit at the end of the year with another bill is not exactly ideal. Let's talk about some of the negatives I've noted with the Swift so far. Some of them stem from the infotainment system, not necessarily the system itself, but more the audio system. Suzuki are notoriously bad when it comes to in-car audio. Now, you may think budget car, it's not really required to have a good sound system, but this is particularly bad. It goes up to 40 in terms of its volume, but even in the mid-20s, you can hear it starting to break up when you're listening to music. It's a really bad audio system, in my opinion. Handling, steering isn't exactly brimming with feel, but overall, it's very chuckable. It's super light, so turning it into a corner here, yeah, it's not too bad. A little bit of understeer, but perfectly acceptable to my mind, at least. We get this instrument binnacle over here, very basic. You get the information such as instantaneous fuel consumption, average fuel consumption, trip computer, and odometer. That's controlled by a stalk on the left side and a stalk on the right side. Very basic. This car's got a multi-function steering wheel. You can change your track or your volume over here. You can mute it here, and you've got your phone controls over here at the bottom left. And if you have cruise control on a GLX model, for example, that will be housed on the right hand side of the steering wheel. It is a flat bottom steering wheel, which is a nice touch by Suzuki, and it's a good size overall. Air conditioning system works really well, blows cool. In fact, I just hopped out of a Mercedes-Benz E-Class and feel like I'm getting a more effective air conditioning system in this little Swift than I am in that car. And this thing really blows cold, and it keeps the interior nice and cool. I think the development of these cars, where they take place there in India, it's quite humid and hot. I think the air cons, when they come out of those sort of climates, are always really top notch, and this is no exception whatsoever. So here we are out on the freeway doing 100 kilometers an hour, and if we check our GPS speed, it indicated about 96 k's an hour, so calibration error around 4 kilometers an hour. We're about to head up to a steep incline. Now, this is a very important test, because if I can go up this hill and maintain momentum or even accelerate, it will be better than my Jimny, which is a good thing. It will also be less frustrating than in that AMT version, because AMT version will drop a gear trying to get up this hill. So what we're going to do is try and go up this hill. I'm starting at just under 110, indicated 105 k's an hour, and now let's accelerate in 5th gear up this hill towards Winnie Mandela Drive. Got my foot flat, and I'm happy to report the car is accelerating up this hill. We are increasing our speed. It's not life-changing acceleration, but we have accelerated, and we're now up to just below the national speed limit at the moment, which is really good. And we're still accelerating, so we're about to hit the the steepest angle of this uphill, and I've just overtaken a Chrysler Grand Voyager, which is always a good thing. We're now doing the national speed limit up this hill towards Winnie Mandela Drive. That is really good. So my primary concern about this engine is that it would feel underpowered. And to be honest with you, not having to gear down up this hill, we've just had to slow down for a slow moving truck there. Everybody was shifting over to this lane, and I've managed to leave it in 5th gear, and it's dropped to 100 k's an hour, and I'm not losing speed up this hill. Now that's a good thing, because up here at Joburg, in this tremendous heat with the aircon on, remember the car is going to be losing roughly 17% of the power that it produces at the coast. So if this car can go up a steep hill on a freeway in Gauteng and not lose speed, in fact gain some speed, I think the engine passes that test. In terms of efficiency, as I mentioned earlier, slightly lighter on fuel than its predecessor, but overall I think this new engine for me is a more enjoyable thing to pilot. I like the mid-range. I like the fact that I don't have to rev the car out to get the best out of it. Then moving on to ride and refinements, I can hear some wind coming over the mirrors, but the general NVH and the general refinement of the car on this freeway, despite the fact that it's quite a windy day here in Johannesburg, it's been abnormally windy here over the past few days, I honestly feel like this is pretty planted for what it is. I'm quite impressed. I was expecting this car to be blown around by the wind. I'm quite confident in its abilities on this freeway at the moment. We're doing the national speed limit. It's more than acceptable. I think Suzuki has done very, very well with this car. So crunch time. If I had a previous generation Swift, would I go out and buy this new one? Well, if I had just bought a previous generation Swift, I might be a bit angry about that, because I think the new car is a step up and is a better product. But I wouldn't rush out and buy it. I think the old car is good enough. If you've got an older, maybe second or even first generation Swift, and you're looking to upgrade, the new car is certainly worthwhile. Super light on fuel. I think it looks a bit better quality, and I think overall nicer to drive, a better executed product. It's just better incrementally, and that is, I think, what Suzuki were going for here. They weren't trying to reinvent the budget car by providing this. It's just basic mobility that's affordable, that many South Africans could aspire to own if they couldn't afford it already. And I think that really epitomizes what the Swift is. This newcomer is surely going to sell in its tens of thousands when it reaches the market in early November of 2024. And I guess that's going to do it for this review. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you haven't done so already, subscribe to the AutoTrader YouTube channel. It helps us out tremendously. If you like this content, hit the like button. Let us know in the comment section below if you think the new Swift is a worthy upgrade over its predecessor, or if you have a previous generation Swift, if you're planning to upgrade or keep your old car. Until next time, thank you guys so much for watching. Cheers.
Search AutoTrader.